before you do anything, you have to do something else first. And before you close, you have to do several other things first. So let me give you the 2 psychological antecedents to closing. In other words, you must have these if you want to be effective. Number 1, of course, which you've heard 1,000 times, is enthusiasm. 51% of all closing effectiveness comes from your enthusiasm, your excitement about the product. One of the best definitions I ever heard of a sale is that a sale is what takes place when there is a transfer of enthusiasm. In other words, when you transfer your enthusiasm about the product or service into the mind of the other person, a sale takes place. Now, this requires, of course, that you have some enthusiasm to transfer into the mind of the other person, which means that the most effective salespeople know their product, they believe in their product, they love their product, and they believe that their product has very worthwhile benefits for their customer. And this is something that I suggest to you, and I've suggested to thousands of salespeople, that if you don't believe in your product, if you don't love your product, if you wouldn't use it yourself, if you wouldn't sell it to your best friend or your mother, then you're probably selling the wrong product. Because you can never get that head of enthusiasm that is transferred into the mind of the prospect that caused them to buy. Now, with regard to enthusiasm, I don't mean the rah-rah, jump-around type of enthusiasm. I mean what is called constrained enthusiasm. It's when the enthusiasm is kept inside you like a kettle, a boiling kettle with the lid put on it, so that you literally bristle with enthusiasm. You have sort of a dynamic tension of excitement about you, but it isn't in the speed of talk or it isn't in your actions. It's contained within. And constrained enthusiasm has perhaps the most powerful effect on human personality that you can imagine. As Ralph Waldo Emerson said, nothing great was ever accomplished without enthusiasm. Well, the second psychological quality is confident expectations. You must confidently expect that the person is going to say yes if you ask often enough. If you ask the person to buy, you must confidently expect them to buy. So you ask expectantly. Would you like the red one or the green one today? In other words, not are you going to take one or not, is this what you had in mind, but you ask it expectantly. And the more confidently you expect to sell, the more likely it is that you will sell. And of course, again, confidence in selling comes from knowledge, it comes from practice, it comes from experience, it comes from believing that the product can do what you say that the product will do. Well, in the process of selling, there are other steps that you have to take. The first step, of course, is qualifying. That you cannot sell a product until you have thoroughly qualified the prospect. And every one of us has been in a situation where we have walked into a store or onto a used car lot and somebody comes up and says, why don't you take it? Or, are you going to buy it today? Or they try to close you without ever asking you what it is you want or what you need. And there's nothing makes us more furious than to have somebody treat us like an idiot. So you have to qualify the prospect. You have to find out 4 things, the answers to 4 things. Question number 1, does the prospect need what you're selling? Question number 2, can the prospect use what you're selling? Like many companies may need a computer, but they may not be able to use it because of the manpower, because of the configuration of the organization. Number 3, can the person afford the product? And number 4, does the person want the product? You see, before you can close, the prospect has to have demonstrated that he or she has a desire to enjoy the benefits of your product or service. So once you've gone through the presentation, once you've gone through and you've qualified on all 4 of those categories and the person wants to buy it, then you're in a position to begin closing. Most of the close in every sale is made in the presentations. In some products, especially in real estate, most of the close is made in how well you present the product to the prospect. The closing technique at the end is almost irrelevant. In many products, the closing technique is very, very important. The key reason why the closing technique is important is this, is that the moment of closing is always difficult. There's always a moment of tension. We call this buyer's remorse in advance, if you like, where whenever we feel that whenever we reach the point where we have to make an important decision, whenever we have to put up money, lay ourselves on the line, what happens is this tension wells up inside of us. And this tension is called the fear of failure. And every single one of us as human beings has this fear of failure. On the part of the customer, the tension in the closing moments of the sale is caused by the fear of making a mistake, the fear of buying the wrong thing, the fear of paying too much, the fear of being criticized by other people. It's caused, and what happens when a person feels this fear? It's almost like having a spear in the stomach. What do? They back away. And whenever they have this fear, they back away and they say things like, let me think it over, leave me some material, could you call me back next week? I have to talk it over with someone else, I have to check it out, I can't afford it, and so on and so forth. These are simply ways of the prospect telling you that I don't think if I make this decision it'll be the right thing for me. Well, the other key stopping point at the close is the fear of rejection. The fear of the person saying no. You see, each of us deep down inside has this fear of being told no to, this fear of being rejected. So one of the things that we do is we very elaborately structure our lives in such a way that we don't put ourselves in front of people that say no. And by the way, if you have an uneasiness about people saying no to you, you've picked a very interesting profession to get into. Because 4 out of 5 sales calls end with no's. Even in the very best of time, in the most boom economy with the finest product, 80% of the people you talk to are going to say no. And when times are tough, 90%. And when times are tougher, 95%. So you must be aware that people are going to say no, and one of the key factors in being successful in selling is be prepared to hear a no and continue. When the person says, no, I don't think so, you must be able to just let it roll off your back like water off a duck's back. You must realize that a no is not personal. When a person says no to you, they're not saying no to you in most cases. They're saying no to a whole package of things and for a whole package of reasons. Well, when you get to the end of the close, when you get to the end of the sales presentation, you've done your prospecting, you've done your contacting, you've done your presentation, you've overcome objections. Now you come to the final moment. You know that the person wants it, but there's this approach avoidance, there's this sales resistance, there's this fear, this uneasiness, this tension starts to build up. And your job is to get through that moment, that tense moment, as rapidly and as painlessly as possible. And closing techniques are not techniques to manipulate other people. They're not techniques to get people to buy things they don't want, don't need, can't use, and can't afford. They're techniques to get people past that moment of tension. And the professional closer takes the person smoothly past the point of the close, and the unprofessional person sits there, and at the end of the presentation they say, well, what do you think? You ever done that? Well, what do you think? And you know what the person says? The tension starts to build up, boom, 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 like Jaws, like that shark coming in, boom, boom, boom. The person says, well, I think I'll think it over. I think I have to talk it over with someone else. Even if they want it, the tension starts to build up. Number one closing technique begins with getting appointments. Is there anybody here who uses the telephone to get appointments? You notice how difficult and frustrating it is. Many people do not use the telephone because they've been rejected and turned down so many times on the telephone that the very thought of it causes them to be angry and frustrated and tense. So what they do is they find every other way possible to make contacts, and the telephone, of course, is the finest and the fastest way if you know how to use it properly. So in approaching a prospect and using the telephone, the key is this, that the first thing that you say to the prospect once you have found out who it is has to be something that breaks preoccupation, grabs attention, and points to the result or benefit of the product. Now let me give you an example. I used to sell, believe it or not, sales training programs. And I would qualify my prospects, and I would call and make appointments. And I found that I could get appointments 9 out of 10 times with qualified prospects using this very simple technique. What I'd do is I'd call up and I'd ask the secretary, I'd say, who is the person who makes the decisions in this area? Who's the person who makes the decisions about sales training for your sales force? They would say, well, that would be Mr. Jones. I'd say, fine. What is his first name, please? Bill Jones. I say, could I speak to Mr. Jones? I said, hello, Mr. Jones. This is Brian Tracy. How would you like to see a method that would enable you to increase your sales by 20 to 30% over the next 12 months? Now, if you're speaking to the right person, the question will be aimed at something that is of relevance and something that the other person needs. Now, what do sales managers sit around and think about all day long? Increasing sales. Sales being down, sales being up, but increasing sales. When you say, would you like to see a system that will enable you to increase your sales by 20 to 30% over the next 12 months? The first question, or the next question that the prospect asks is, what is it? And that's where you go into the close. And when you are telephoning for an appointment, you are telephoning to sell an appointment, not to sell a product. The biggest mistake we make is we go in to start describing our product on the telephone, and the person says, well, no, I'm sorry, I'm not interested, can't afford it, I don't have the time, and so on. So all you do is you're selling 10 minutes. You say, that's exactly what I want to talk to you about. I need about 10 minutes of your time. I'll show you what I've got, and you can judge for yourself if it's what you want. If the person says something like, and I used to hear this, they say, well, how much is it? They don't even know what it is. Have you ever heard that? How much is it? And this is the way you handle that. You say, Mr. Prospect, if it's not exactly what you're looking for, there's no charge at all. Get the price thing out of the way. If it's not exactly what you're looking for, it doesn't cost you anything. Then the person says, well, could you tell me a little bit about it? I say, well, that's why I need just 10 minutes of your time. Just 10 minutes, I'll be able to show you what I've got, and you can judge for yourself if it's what you're looking for. Now, the person will often, now remember this, is that good prospects are always busy and hard to get to. Poor prospects are not busy, and they're easy to get to. If you call up somebody and you ask for an appointment, they say, sure, come on over anytime, you can be sure the person isn't going to buy anything from you. So you have to be very, very sharp in using the telephone. Now, the person's going to say this, the prospect's going to say this, well, could you tell me a little bit about it? You say, yes, I would like to, but there's something I have to show you. Now, as soon as you say the word show, you've eliminated the necessity to describe it on the telephone. The person says, well, could you send me something in the mail? I say, I would like to send it to you in the mail, but you know how bad the mails are. Why don't I drop it off personally sometime this afternoon? Now, if the person is at all serious, they'll say, okay, drop it off personally sometime this afternoon. I'll say, will you be there? Yes, I'll be there. Okay, about 3 o'clock, I'll be in your neighborhood. I'll drop it off personally. Don't mail information. When people say, send me some information in the mail, What they're saying is, go away. I'm not interested. And when you send it to them in the mail, it goes right across the desk and into the wastebasket. If you're going to send things in the mail, what you do is you put it in the envelope, throw it in your own wastebasket, save yourself a stamp. We make the mistake of thinking we can throw it in the mail and we're actually making sales. No, we're not making sales. So what you ask for is 10 minutes, and this is the key expression. You be the judge. You decide for yourself if this is what you're looking for. And if you say it in that way, the person will say, well, I don't know. All I need is 10 minutes of your time, and you can judge for yourself. Because what this does is this says that you'll only be there for a short period of time. You will put no pressure on the person. You'll just show them what you've got. If the person doesn't want to select one in 10 minutes, you'll be gone. Now, I have found that if you ask for 30 minutes, you will have to wait for weeks, maybe forever. If you ask for 10 minutes, you can always be slipped in. Don't make the mistake of doing the old insurance salesman's trick. God bless the insurance industry. Of saying, how about 10 o'clock today or 2 o'clock tomorrow? This alternative close on it. Don't do that, because it's been used so many times that what it does is it insults the other person. Just say sometime this afternoon or maybe sometime tomorrow. Be very flexible. Once the person gives you a time. Now, this is another thing they do. They say, why don't you call me on Monday and we'll set up an appointment. And what you say to them is this. You say, look, I've got my calendar right here. Is your calendar handy? Dumb question. Of course, the person's at their desk. Their calendar is handy. You say, let's set up a time right now. How about 10 o'clock Monday morning? Don't allow yourself to be put off with this call me back on Monday nonsense, because it's just another way of them avoiding seeing you. Remember, the very best customers you'll ever have are the ones you're going to have to fight to get in to see. They are the ones who are the best for you, so when they try to put you off and they try to avoid you and they try to make excuses, it's what they're saying is this may be a very, very good customer. And somebody is going to get to that prospect, and somebody is going to sell the prospect. It might as well be you. So just be persistent, be polite, be firm. Say, look, all I need is 10 minutes of your time. Just 10 minutes will do it. 10 minutes you'll be able to decide for yourself. And just sell 10 minutes. If they ask you about your product or service, say, it's too involved to go into on the phone, but take 10 minutes and I'll show you what I've got. And sell only that. See, if you cannot close on the telephone appointments, you can't even get to first base. And become good at it. If you are shy about using the phone, if anxious, if you don't like to use the telephone, it's because you've had frustrating experiences in the past.
Now, communications is another critical factor in relationships. Good communications require time, which I keep talking about. They require a high quality and quantity of time. So a car trip, I've mentioned, is an opportunity for uninterrupted conversation with your spouse over an extended period of time. A car trip, Barbara and I will sometimes drive to Palm Springs to take a 2 or 3 day weekend. And what we'll do is we'll drive all the way there, 2.5 to 3 hours, and all the way back, and we will never play anything on the radio. Never play a CD. We'll just use that time because, as I mentioned before, the car becomes a cocoon and it fills with conversation. And amazing things come out, and you get to talk about all kinds of things. And the longer you're in that car, the more things come out. I've known cases where people are on the verge of getting married and they took a car trip to visit relatives, 3 or 4 hours. By the time they got out of that car, they hated each other's guts. They never got married. I've had friends who are couples, two, husband and wife, and they took a car trip on vacation. By the time they got there, they never wanted to see each other again because the car brings out, and it's quite amazing. It's almost like a drug. It's like a truth serum. It brings out what is really in the other person when you drive in a car for a long time. With my kids, and they know this, with my kids, whenever I would drive them anywhere, I would never have anything on. I would just listen to them and ask them questions. Never, or they would listen to me. I remember I was driving with David and some of his friends, and I was talking to them about when you grow up, you've got to have goals, and it's really important that you become men of character and everything else. And there's 3 of his friends, and they're all sitting there quietly, and at the end of it, they all went like this. Thank you for the seminar, Mr. Tracy. You remember that, Dave? From then on, I stopped talking when I was driving with my kids and asked them questions. So number 1, men are direct. Number 2 is women are indirect. And this is very important to understand. Men and women are very, very different in their personalities and temperaments. One of the problems that women have is women can sense things and communicate with women and know what's going on with women without even really asking them. And they assume that men have the same ability and they're just not trying. And the fact is that men are not. If you take a woman's head and you take a screw off the top of the woman's head, you'll find a computer with lights and diodes and going all over the place. If you take the top off a man's head, you see one big block. Nothing's happening. There's no lights. When a man and woman are sitting in front of a television, 80% of a woman's brain is fully functioning. She's thinking about the television. She's thinking about him. She's thinking about life. She's thinking about relationship. She's thinking about how big her stomach is, and she's thinking about whether she picked up the groceries, and she's thinking about the friend she spoke to and the phone call she got and the work she has to do. He's just sitting and watching TV. Here's the dumbest question. Actually, it's the second dumbest question a woman can ask a man. Jerry Seinfeld said this is, when women say, what do men think about? And his answer was, not much. Dumbest thing you can say to a man, what are you thinking about? He goes, huh? Oh, I was just thinking how beautiful you are. He's scrambling. He's like a fish on the dock thinking of something to say because he's not thinking about anything. He's just sitting there. He's got nothing going. He's shut down, you know. And here's the worst question. That's the second worst. Tell me what you're really feeling. Men are like fence posts. They don't feel anything. They're just sitting there. But they want to give you an answer, so they scramble around in their mind like a person running around opening drawers looking for something, trying to give you an answer that will make you happy. Well, I was just feeling about how much I love you. Oh, that's good. I mean, that's what she wanted. Now can I go back to the television, please? So you have to understand, men and women are different. Men are direct. They say things directly, and women are indirect. Men are not mind readers, and many women are. Women are often mind readers. Women can pick things up. You know, a man can call home and he can say, and she'll answer the phone and he'll say, hi, and she'll say, what's wrong? She could pick up what's wrong. It's your boss. What did he say? And she can pick up that there's a problem in his life from a hi or a hello, from a single word. He can walk in looking cheerful as everything else. She'll say, what's the matter? What's wrong? What happened? Well, what do you mean what happened? Come on, tell me. How do you know this stuff? Women are human lie detectors. You can't lie to a woman. And if you're going to lie to a woman, even on the phone, she can pick it up. If you're going to lie to a woman, lie on the phone because she can't see your face. That's the only chance you've got of getting past. But even then, it may not work. Sometimes that's why men break up by email. Or now they're breaking up by Twitter. Because women, you say, whatever you say, women can pick up the truth absolutely instantly. And so women are really, really sensitive to these things. Men are not. Men are very easily bamboozled. Women are brilliant at relationships. Men are not. Women think about relationships all the time. Men very seldom think about them. And this is just simply the way the human brain is constructed. So the most common problems in relationships are, first of all, lack of commitment. And a lack of commitment means that you're going part of the way, as we said before. And you can always solve a lack of commitment problem by making a decision you're in 100%. 100%. My friend Charlie Jones says, as far as my wife concerns, divorce, never. Never, 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 never. The second problem is trying to change the other. What you seize is what you get. Remember Flip Wilson? What you seize is what you get. People don't change, and trying to change another person is a very subtle way. Lack of commitment, by the way, is a subtle way of saying that I'm really not convinced that you're the right person for me, which it means I'm really not convinced that you're good enough. And whenever a person is reminded or suggested that they're not good enough, their self-esteem goes down, they become insecure, they become frustrated. And it's the same thing here. Trying to change the other person is a way of saying that you're simply not satisfactory to me the way you are. So therefore, I want you to do more of this and less of that. I want you to straighten up and fly right. And it's amazing. People at weddings will talk to the bride, and the bride says, well, I'll knock the rough edges off him after we've been married for a while. Or I'll get him to stop doing that, or he'll start doing this. And so they go in with this whole idea. And they have this idea that you can change people. Well, this is a human personality. This is the past of a person, and this is the present of the person. So when you try to change the person, what you're doing is you're working on the tip of the iceberg. But since you cannot change all that history, going back to early childhood, every year of that person's life, all those experiences, beliefs, convictions, fears, doubts, and so on, since you cannot change all that, it's very hard to change a person just by pushing on the top of the iceberg. If you cannot change all of that, you probably can't change the person at all. So what you do is you just accept the person completely for who they are, with no judgment and no questions. And if there's things that you would wish that person would do, you can always say, I would appreciate it if you would pick up your socks or put your dishes in the sink or something like that. Men are real quick to respond, by the way. If you ask us to do something, we will. Why don't you take the trash out? Well, I didn't know you wanted the trash taken out. Well, the trash bag is sitting there in the living room. I put it in the living room between you and the television so you'd see it. I said, I thought you didn't have any other place to put it. Would you take it out? Of course. And they'll take it out. Would you do this? Of course. You ask a man to do anything, they'll do anything that you ask them to. But don't say, why don't you, think of it yourself? Are you kidding? They don't think about anything. So when you're direct with a man, when you want him to do something or not do something, he'll almost always do it immediately. But you have to ask him. Just the most powerful word in the human lexicon is the word ask. Ask for what you want. Ask clearly. Ask repeatedly if necessary. Ask confidently. Ask cheerfully. Ask politely. Ask warmly. But just ask. Men are real suckers for that. You ask us to do it, we'll do it. We'll take out the trash. We'll mow the lawn. We'll pick up the groceries. We'll pick up stuff on the way home. Trying to change the other is a way of saying that you're not good enough the way you are. and therefore you need to be whipped into shape. And so sometimes we find if you just stop trying to change a person and just say, would you do this for me or do that for me, they'll change all by themselves. Sometimes people are proud of the person they've become, and they'll become more adamant when you try to change them. They'll dig in, but they'll also be angry, because what you're telling them is, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough for you. Somehow you're superior to me, that you feel that you can inflict what you think is good for me on me. I mean, it's not a good road to go down. Okay, number 3 is jealousy. Jealousy is called the green-eyed monster, and it comes from the feeling of low self-esteem. People who feel jealous feel I'm not good enough. They feel someone else could never really love me. And the way that you deal with jealousy, say the natural human condition, is that of feeling inferior. We, from infancy, have learned to compare ourselves with others. So we're always comparing ourselves with other people. And we're always feeling better or feeling worse. And so in many cases, because we were born as a child, here's what happened. According to the psychiatrist, when we're born as a child, we're really small. And our parents are really big and powerful. And they make all decisions and they know all things. In fact, they have found that a child's attitude toward God is determined by the way their parents treat them. If their father is angry and demanding, then they think God is an angry and demanding and vengeful God. So if their father is warm and loving and supportive, they think that's the way God is. And they develop that feeling before they can even speak. That becomes their worldview of these powerful people. And whenever something happens, like the person that we're interested in seems to express an interest in someone else, we again feel little, we feel inferior, we feel that we're not good enough. Be very alert to this. But most jealousy comes from inside the person experiencing it, not from the external experience. One last point, it is never cute to make a person feel jealous. Sometimes they say, you should flirt with somebody else when you're with him or her, and it'll make them feel jealous and they'll realize how much they like you. It is never cute to make a person feel jealous, because jealousy is extremely painful. Not only that, if a person has real problems with jealousy, it can make them really unhappy, right to the point of violence and mental illness and all kinds of things. So jealousy is something that's a real problem in relationships, and try to avoid it. To resolve this, work on your own self-concept by saying, I like myself, or I love myself. People who have high self-esteem don't worry about jealousy. They don't worry about these things because they have such confidence in themselves that it doesn't affect them.